from the Penn Libraries.
Phone. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Excel charts workshop. Hopefully, everyone saw the little note that said that our meeting is being recorded. We're planning to be online for about an hour. I'm going to present for about 45 minutes, and I'm going to have plenty of time throughout the workshop for questions, and also I'm going to be asking you some questions. The first question I'm asking everyone is up on the screen now, which is a little poll that says, how often do you use Excel? And the choices are every day, once a week, once a month, hardly ever, and you can see the results right there. So if you have not yet voted, please go ahead and vote. It looks like we have 9 people who voted and 9 participants, so I guess everybody has voted. We have 20 people registered, so we may have a few more people joining us, and it'll always be a little bit hard when people join late because we won't be able to have them introduce themselves to the group, so we may just take a few minutes to welcome them and get them comfortable with the space. The first thing I'm going to talk about is at the very top of your screen, there is an icon of a person raising his hand. If you want to go ahead and click the little down arrow next to that, you see the choices that you have. And I'm going to ask you to use these feedback mechanisms to let me know how I'm doing. There's speak louder, speak softer. The more important things I think are the speed up with the little rabbit next to it and the slow down with the turtle next to it. And you're welcome to jump in with laughter and applause if you feel inspired. You're also welcome to agree or disagree with me and also let me know if you're not around so I don't expect a response. That's the step away status that's there. So feel free to go ahead and experiment with the different status symbols. I'll be looking at the list of participants every so often to see how people are doing in terms of keeping up with me or if any questions have come up. So right now I see Christiane has raised her hand. Christiane, it's just perfect to do this with a Mac. I have one PC and one Mac ready, and I will try to explain through audio where to look for commands on the Mac, and if you have difficulty finding them, I'll switch over to my Mac and do the demo on the Mac. And Excel on the Mac is significantly different than it is on the PC, so it might take you just a little bit of extra time to kind of keep up with some of the things. A lot of the information in Mac is under the View toolbar section, so there are some toolbars you'll need to turn on. No, I think, Christiane, you'll be fine staying with the Mac. You want to use the computer that you're most likely to use to actually do your Excel work, and I use both Mac and PC on a daily basis. I switch back and forth. Great. So we have 10 folks and we have the results from our poll. And since 40% of you do not use Excel very often, I'm going to take it a little bit slow and try to explain where things are as I do the demonstrations. The way I'm planning this is I'm going to start out with a tour of the materials that are available for you on our website. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about lynda.com. Then I'm going to go ahead and ask everybody to open up the same spreadsheet. So all of us will have Excel open on our own computers as well as this Adobe Connect room. So when I'm doing something on the screen, you should be able to do the very same thing on your own computer. And that's actually when the learning happens. As you might imagine, watching me use Excel doesn't actually teach you Excel. It's when you have to find the places on Excel on your own computer, and that's what not only takes time, but that's also the more important part of our morning. So I will stop talking every so often, and I will leave some solid time for you to replicate what I am doing. And I'm also going to assume during that time that you'll let me know in the chat window any questions you have, anything confusing. If your screen looks completely different from mine, that's a good thing to let me know. Before we start, I know there are some new people who have just arrived. If there's anybody who has a headset microphone and would like to just be able to talk, just let me know in the chat window and I will give you microphone privileges because it's always easier to talk back to me than it is to chat with me. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and hide this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw your attention to the web links box. It's at the top of your screen. There are 3 links there. The first one is the Excel guide. The second one is Linda at WIC. And the third one is the infographics guide. You can go ahead and open all 3 of them up. I'm going to share my screen and show you what's here and why we're starting with these three documents. So let me share my screen with you. What you should see on my screen is the Weigel Information Commons homepage. And we have quite a lot of materials put on our site relating to Excel. Yes, Deb, all of the materials I'm going to show you are linked from our guide. So actually, I'm going to pull that up on the screen next. So from our homepage, on the right side, you'll see a link to tutorials. That opens up our tutorials page. At the top of the tutorials page is a search box. If I type in Excel, that shrinks the list, and this takes you to the guide. And you can get directly to this guide from the link at the top of Adobe Connect. So there's 2 ways to get here. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the guide a little bit. The guide is organized with tabs for each of the workshops that we present. So here's our basics workshop. Today we're going to be going through our charts workshop, and we'll be using 2 files. The 2 files are here. This is the workshop handout, and this is the workshop file. And both of these documents are also in Adobe Connect. In the middle box called File Share, you'll see the very same. The Excel Charts Workbook 3 is our workshop file, and Excel Charts is our workshop handout. So everything you see today is available to you on the web. You should feel very free to share it with other people. We welcome it when people adapt our materials, and we love it when people give us suggestions. Much of the material that's on our guide has come to us as a result of people asking us questions, and then we will produce some documentation or practice materials based on what we see is needed around campus. So that's the very quick tour of the Excel guide. The more advanced topics we have are data analysis, formulas, and then statistics in Excel. Today we're going to be sticking to the charts. The second link that's in your web links section is a link to Linda at WIC. And how you can find our Linda page is on our home page. At the left is our Google search box. I'm going to type in Linda with a Y, L-Y-N-D-A, and this will take you to our Linda page. Linda is arguably the easiest way to teach yourself Excel, and they have many advanced tutorials. You can reserve a license to Linda online now. This is a new service that we offer. You can reserve it for up to a week ahead and up to a day ahead. So you can reserve it tomorrow. You can see there are 3 licenses open. And tomorrow morning, the person on duty here at the Weigel Information Commons will issue you the license electronically. What Linda provides are some thousands and thousands of tutorials on more advanced topics in Excel. Things like macros, customizing your charts. Some of the things we talk about today, if you want to go deeper into them, Linda provides a self-paced way to kind of explore this on your own time and from anywhere. One of the big advantages of the remote license to Linda is you'll be able to access this from your dorm room, from your home, and from anywhere where you have a good internet connection. Erica asked a question about the recording. So today's workshop is going to be recorded, and it's going to be available on the Penn Library's YouTube channel, and it will be posted probably within a week, and then you'll be able to watch it again as needed. So those are the first two items under web links. The third item is our infographics guide. And I wanted to mention this because it's one of the newer guides we have. And what it talks about is after you know how to use Excel to make charts, how do you make good decisions in terms of colors, in terms of the kinds of structures you want to create in your charts. And one of the new workshops we're offering here at the Weigel Information Commons is infographics design, which has Excel as one of its parts. So we have some sample infographics, we have books on infographics, and then under the graphic design basics, we have a nice set of slides that walk you through the process of making a variety of different types of graphics. Some of them involve charts, and some of them are related to other ways to work with data. So this is more to give you ideas for what you might want your Excel charts to look like after you go through the process of learning how to make them. So you can see a variety of different types of charts here. And we have some other materials on our website as well on how to work with graphs and charts. So that is my quick overview of the three sets of links that we have up in the web links section. I'm going to stop now and ask, was everybody able to open the three sets of links? And do you have any questions for me? Great. It looks like most folks are doing fine. So the first thing I want to do is to ask everybody to open up the two files that are in the file shares. Actually, you might as well open all three. The first one is called pivotdata.xls. The second one is called the Excel Charts Workbook.xls. And the third one is the Excel Charts PDF file. And what I'm going to do now is share my screen and bring those documents up. Let me open up that pivot table. That's the only thing I still need to open. And let's see. 1 second while I find that. Great. So as you see my screen, let me start with actually the PDF document. This is our handout for today's workshop. Again, this is available freely on the web. And it's based for 2007, so there are some new things that we need to update on this handout. But this is the basic structure of what we plan to cover this morning, is basically focusing on the types of charts that you can make. This talks through the 11 types of charts in 2007. There are some new chart types in newer versions of Excel. This next part is worth taking a little bit of time on, and that's basically the types of charts that you might want to make. If you're planning to show a trend over time, then a column chart or a line chart is generally a good way to go. If you're trying to show differences across different variables, a bar chart or a clustered column chart might work well. And there's some details about the pie chart. And then the scatter chart is really helpful for research relationships. A scatter chart is often used to explain regression analysis and other types of statistical analysis. There's also several types of advanced charts for stocks and financial data, which we don't go through in much detail, but we can certainly talk about. The next part of this handout shows some common types of charts, just examples, so you have a visual to go with the different chart types. Okay. And I guess one question I'll have for you a little bit later is what are the types of charts you've made already, so we can build on what you already know. Okay, so the rest of the handout will kind of go through the hands-on section. And I'll try to point out for the folks on Macs how things might look a little different on the Mac end. So this is a pretty generic handout that walks through the most common things you might want to do with an Excel chart. There's chart elements, inserting images. Dev mentioned that he's already found the fruits. And then there's some links to some Microsoft Office online resources. So that's our handout for today. Then we have two Excel spreadsheets that hopefully have opened up already for you in Excel. The first one I'm going to talk about is called Excel Charts. And down at the bottom, you should see several pages. Why don't I now ask everybody to go ahead and open their Excel Charts workbook and get yourself to the first page so that you're looking at this gradebook. I made my gradebook large so you can see all the details. It probably doesn't look quite as big on your screen as it does in the Adobe Connect window. Okay, I'll give everyone a second to go ahead and open up their charts workbook. Please let me know in the chat window if any difficulties come up. Great, you guys are doing great at keeping up. So the first thing I'm going to do is do a very simple demo of creating a chart. Christiane, if you don't see this tab at the bottom of your worksheet, there should be, well, there's two of them that you need, so you might be in the other one. One of them is called Pivot Data. That one has a lot of data, and this one just has several tabs, but each tab doesn't have much data in it. Is your document called Excel Charts Workbook 3? Yep, perfect. And the first tab is the gradebook. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is a very simple demo of a gradebook graph. One thing I wanted to mention is what Excel expects from your data. Excel does better making graphs when your data is in a nice box. You can see here all my data. It starts over here at A2 with a blank cell, and it ends over here at E7. There are no extraneous pieces of information right next to my data. And this is a good, healthy way to build your graph or chart, is to leave a blank row and a blank column on either side of your data. If you do not leave a blank row or a column, Excel will often make a mistake and try to bring data into your graph that really doesn't belong. So if I ever need to do averages or totals, let's say I wanted to do an average here for the first quarter, I would always set my formulas up with a blank row in between so that when I graph, I don't get the averages mixed in with my data. So here I can put these are my averages. Okay, so the main thing to remember is to leave a blank row and a blank column on either side of the data that you're trying to graph. So in order to graph this, I'm going to click in the first cell, A2. I'm going to hold my Shift key and click on the last cell. When you hold your Shift key and click, it will select data in a box, which is the way that Excel is looking for the data to show up. Up at the top is Insert, and here are all my charts. I'm going to go ahead and click on the column chart and choose the very first option, which is a clustered column, and that should make my first graph for me. I can pick the graph up by its edge and move it down a little bit so that I can see the data and the graph right next to each other. Okay, let me give everybody a chance to do that, and you should have your first graph now. Let me actually move it over to the side here. So my data is on the left and my graph is on the right, and we'll talk next about the way in which this data is presented and whether it's helpful to us. Okay, Dev asked a question about adding a line to your data. Dev, the lines are under the home box. Down here underneath the font are the options to put borders around your data, and I do strongly recommend bordering your data. It makes it easier later to remember what you decided to do. Okay, to do the averages, Christiane, let me just delete them. I left a blank row so that I wouldn't mix my data up with my summary. I clicked here in B9, and this was covered in the formulas workshop. All your formulas start with the equal sign, and then the name of this formula is average. I open my data set, I select the data, and I close, and that calculates the average of the data that started in B3 and went to B7. And then at the bottom right, I make my mouse into a black plus sign and I drag the formula over, and that copies my averages across the page. Okay. So I have a question now about the axis. To switch the axis, actually that's the next thing I'm going to talk about, Deb. So hold on just one second. Let me make sure everybody has their basic graph together. No need to say oops. I welcome questions. Okay. Does anyone have any questions so far? Do you know how to add those lines on a Mac? Yes, on a Mac it would be under Format, Cells, and you can put a border around the cells in the same way. There's also a ribbon now on the Mac, and the Home tab on the ribbon should also have your bordering options. You can also click in a cell, in any cell, and right-click your mouse, which is Command-click on the Mac, and then go to Format Cells. And under Format Cells, let's see. Why is it not coming up? Here we go. Under border are the options for bordering the cells. Okay, so right-click, command-click on a Mac should take you to the full details on format cells. They should be largely similar than they are to a PC. Great. So the first thing I'm going to do, here is my graph, and the first thing that's wrong with it is that there's no title on it. The second thing that I don't like about it is that it shows me how my 5 students did, but it doesn't actually show me if my grading has been consistent, which is the question I had when I decided to make this graph. So the first thing I'm going to do is click in the graph, and that gives me several new menu items at the top. There's Design, Layout, and Format. Under Design is the details for how I can change the type of chart I have, and the Select Data is where I can see my rows and my columns, and if you do switch row and column, it will basically realign the data for you so that now instead of looking at people across time, I am looking at grades across each quarter. So once again, the way I did this, let me cancel. I clicked on the chart to make it live. Up at the top, I notice my new menu, and under Design is Select Data, and above my data is Switch Row and Column, and that rearranges my data to be going across instead of up and down. So it basically asks a different question from my data. I like this better, so I'm going to click OK. And then under Layout, I'm going to add a title. I'm going to center it. Actually, I think I'm going to put it above the chart. I'm going to put Grading Averages, or Grading Trends maybe, Grading by Quarter. Okay, the Design tab on a Mac, if you click on the chart, what version, Karubo, are you using on the Mac? Christiane, to add a title, I went to, on the PC, I went to the Layout option, and here's my chart title up at the top. Okay, Karuba is on 2010 on a Mac, so let me see if I can get my Mac Excel going, and then we'll just switch computers for a second. Give me 1 second. Excel is just opening up. Just one second. I have it getting open now. Okay, great. I'm back. So I have my Mac open now, and I've recreated the same graph on the Mac. So let me try to switch to the Mac, and we can take a peek and see if we're able to get to the Design tab. Okay, hopefully everybody's able to see the same spreadsheet now on the Mac, and I'm just going to change the zoom so it's a little bit easier to see the details. Okay, so when I'm on a Mac, if I click on the chart area, up at the top is charts, and here's chart layout. There's chart title for adding the chart title, and then under format is the rest, and then under chart up at the very top is the source data, and that's where my switch row column option is, to switch the rows and the columns. So that should work pretty much identically to what we just did on the PC. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the PC now, because I think the majority of you are on PCs. So let me go back and share my screen. Okay. Hopefully that was not too confusing for you. We just went from PC to Mac and back to PC. So let me see what other questions there are in the chat window. How do I change the icon showing series 1 to 5 in one step instead of naming each of them? That's a really good question, Anne. It has to do with the source data that you choose. So if I am here in my graph, I click on my chart and I go to Design and select Data. When you first select the data, if you select the titles here under series name, as well as the values, then it will actually put the series in, and then you shouldn't have to rename each one by one. And the reason this worked for me in an automated way is I basically started by selecting all of the data, not just the numbers. If I just had selected the numbers, Excel would not automatically have filled in the names of the series, but since I selected the entire set, it was smart enough to put my names in for me under the series. Erica, would you mind just explaining to me which option you're looking for? Is this to add the lines on the Mac? To add a title. Okay, let me hit stop sharing here, and let's see if we can troubleshoot this very quickly. I'm just going to share my screen. I'm on the Mac now, and I'm clicking on the graph, and up at the data, and then under the Home tab, if you click on Home, it should open up a little ribbon, and there should be Charts, Chart Layout, which is where the title is, and then title above chart, we'll put the title in, and then Format. If you want to just check which version of Excel you have, if you have an older form of Excel, under Chart should be Charts Options. So see under Chart if you have something called Chart Options, and that should be also a good place to look for the titles. If you have a version of Excel prior to 2010, then I think that might be why you have to look under the Chart Options. That's okay. Yeah, thank you, Erica. Good luck finding the titles. How is everybody else holding up? Great, so far so good. So what we did so far is we made a very simple graph. The next thing I want to do is go over to the PDF, the handout again, and talk a little bit about the ways in which you can work with the data. So what we did so far is we chose a chart type. We did a really simple one. We added chart titles. The secondary axis is really worth talking about, so that's the next demo I'm going to do. If everyone's ready, I'm going to ask you to go back to that same chart workbook, and we're going to go to the second tab called Workshops at the bottom. And let me make this a little bit big so you can see it. So one of the things that Excel is very good at is showing data that where the data is of different types, but you need to be able to make a point with it by comparing a trend over time. So here is a list of workshops and attendees. This is from our data from the Weigel Information Commons. This is several years ago. This is like 5 years ago. If I graph this in the same way that I graph the grades, I click up here in A2, hold my Shift key, click down here at the bottom of my box. I go to Insert, and this time I choose a line graph. This is the graph I get. And it's not a very helpful graph because in each workshop there are a lot more attendees. So my attendee graph is really easy to read, but my workshops graph is almost meaningless because it's so flat. So this is a pretty typical situation when you're comparing apples and oranges. You might be comparing salaries and number of staff. For example, salaries are going to be like $50,000. The number of staff is going to be like 10. So anytime you're trying to show a trend where one group of data is on one level of measurement and another is on a different level of measurement, that's when you get this issue where a secondary axis makes it much easier for your audience to be able to tell what's going on. So what I'm going to do is select the workshops list. When I click on it, you see it highlights all of the dots in my series. I'm going to click my right mouse button and I'm going to go to Format Data Series. And the details for this are in your handout. The very first choice I get is this that says, do you want to plot this on a secondary axis? And that's exactly what I want to do. When I plot it on a secondary axis, notice what happens. I now have a very clear visual that the ratio of my attendees and the number of workshops, it's really tracking quite nicely. And because I'm showing attendees on this left axis and workshops on the right axis, the audience is able to see that these two pieces of information actually have a lot more in common than they did prior. The next thing I usually do is I click on workshops and I turn that into a bar graph. So you can basically set the graph type for each series one by one. So let's see. If I go to chart type and change this to a bar graph, now you can see this is a much nicer graph. Workshops go in bars and the attendees is a line graph, but you can clearly see how the two types of information relate to each other, but they're presented on the same graph. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to try that out. Once again, what I did is I first selected the data, I made a line graph, and then I selected the workshops and put them on a separate axis and also made them into a bar graph. I do think I need a title on this, so we can put that here. Here's the chart title. This time I could add a legend, or I could turn off the legend, as you like. Legend at right. And there's the data legend and data tables, and there's also axis titles. So since I have two axes, I really should have two different titles for them. So here's my vertical title here. And I'm going to edit this to say attendees. And then my second vertical axis, which is my secondary vertical axis, that's actually going to be my workshops. So now it's a lot clearer. So I can change my training trends. So over last year, here are my training trends, and I have workshops on one axis and attendees on the other. Okay. Oh, Deb, does that help you understand which axis goes with which thing? Um, oh, to change the row and column, that's under Design, Select Data, and Switch Row and Column. And that should let you switch it back. Okay, so this was a pretty quick demo of using two different axes and two different chart types in the same graph. Okay, to just switch the bar graph, you can click on one of the bars. That should select all the bars, and then go to Change Chart Type, and then you should be able to make a change just on that one series. Okay. I heard a loud noise in my ear, so I'm not sure quite what that was. But let me stop there. It's about 10:37, and I'm just going to ask if anyone had any questions or how this second demo went for all of you on your end. Were you able to replicate this graph on your own computer? For the second demo, does the column work just as well as the bar? Right now we're actually in a column graph and a line graph. If I select this series and try to turn this into a bar graph, I don't think it will work as well, but let's try it. That doesn't look too great. So I would not do that because you want to have the same visual in terms of the sizes of I mean, yeah, I think this would be much harder to read, so I would not advise that. Okay. Dev, were you able to put it back to a column? I think I was saying bar, but I actually meant column. Great. It looks like people are doing pretty well. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to type them into the chat window. And also don't forget you have these feedback mechanisms to tell me if you need me to speed up or slow down, or if anything that I'm going through is confusing. So on the handout, going back to the handout, what we just did is this creating a secondary axis. That's what we just went through. The next thing I want to talk about is this idea of adding notes and images. Robert, did you have a question? Did you want to go ahead and type it into the chat window? Oh, sorry, no trouble. Let me go ahead. So the next thing I was going to walk through was a demo working with images and notes. And this is more of a kind of a fun exercise. You'll have to see how much this fits into your workflow, whether it's helpful to you or not. But I find that spending some time making your graphs and charts look better really pays off. First, people continue to pay attention to them. They don't get bored. They don't get glazed over from too many statistics. And sometimes it really helps you to kind of tell a story. So the little demo we have is on that same spreadsheet, and it's the tab called Pie. And here you have a little spreadsheet of the number of different types of pies sold by a small bakery, let's say. So if I graph this, I'm going to click on apples down to the last number. I'm going to make a simple pie graph, a 2D pie, just to make it easy. Okay, so that's a very simple pie showing how many pies we sold of different kinds. Yes, we are making a pie chart with images of pie. So one of the things that's easy to do is to customize the colors of this pie piece. So for example, my apples are blue and apples are not blue. So if I click once on my pie piece, that selects the entire pie. If I click again on a particular piece, that selects just the apples. If I right click and format the data point, I can make sure that my apple has a specific color. And maybe apples should be bright red. Okay. Same now next is bananas. And bananas typically are yellow. So I could do something simple like this just with colors. That's a little too yellow. Okay. So changing the colors of my pie is really simple. But what's also fun to do is actually to put images into your graphs. And this, just as an example, I'm going to go over to my guide. This is the same guide we were on, Excel guides. And here are images of apples. Oh, my apples have disappeared. Let's see if my bananas are there. Bananas are there. I can right click, save this picture of bananas on my computer. And then in Excel, I can click my bananas pie piece. Once again, I'm going to click until only the banana piece is selected. Right click, format data point. And this time, instead of a color, I would like to put a picture inside my banana piece. So under my downloads should be my bananas. Let me find it real quick. Okay, and there's my bananas. So if you wanted to continue this process, you could find small pictures of each fruit and fill them into your pie. Christiane, the picture of bananas is over on the guide that we started with, the Excel guide here. Under the charts, under the workshop handout and workshop file are links to the pictures. So here's my oranges. Let me bring my oranges down. And then in Excel, I can go to my oranges, which are purple. And same way, I'm just going to pull my oranges in with the picture fill from a file to my oranges. Okay. One thing that's really nice about playing with images in Excel is that the images stay regardless of the chart type you decide to use. So if I decide not to use a pie chart, and I'm going to change this into a column chart, you'll see that my bananas and oranges are still in their respective bars. Something that's fun to do is if you click on a column chart and go back to that same process, under, let me just click the bananas. So I click once to select everything. Click one more time just to select the bananas. And under the data point for the bananas, under the fill, there's this option to stack and also stack and scale. So if we stack and scale with 1 unit per picture, that's going to be a stack of bananas. Let me find that again. Let's do a simple stack. Now, in order to have the bananas look right, I wouldn't use this kind of a picture. I would actually use an icon of a banana, and that's something to play with. Anytime you're making a column graph, things will look better if you can find an icon. And the new version of Excel allows you, when you go into the data point, under Fill and Picture, you can actually go directly to Clip Art, and it will take you online to the Office website. So if I look for banana, this kind of a banana picture will work a lot better because it has space around it. Okay, so let me do a stack there. And you can see this looks a lot more like a stack of bananas, except I put them in the cherries. Okay. There is a library, Rachel, of pictures you can use for future graphs. Once again, the simplest way to get there is click on an icon. Here's Peaches. Right-click, Format Data Point, Fill, Picture Fill, Clip Art, and then you can do a search for peach. And let's see if Microsoft has any peach pictures. So that's pretty good. You can select that. And the last piece is I want to stack my peaches. That looks good. Okay, so fruits are actually, yes, my cherries need to be, my cherries are bananas right now, so we'll have to fix that. Okay, so that's a simple example of using images. You can also use images in your actual graph, and this can be incredibly powerful. I can click on the plot area, for example, right-click and format it, and have that be a picture. I don't want to use my cherries, but this might look a lot nicer. Under texture, there are lots of nice neutral textures that you can use to make your graph just kind of look a little bit better. So under format chart area is another space that can be filled in with the texture. So here I'm using a jeans background and then a canvas for my actual graph that's a little bit bright. So lots of different ways to make your graphs look a lot more attractive. And this is where the infographics guide can be really helpful to you. To get the background for the whole graph, Christiane, I put my mouse on the background until I see the little pop-up that says Chart Area. I right-click my mouse, go to Format Chart Area, and under Picture is the texture options. And I picked a kind of a neutral texture to be the background for my chart. Great, we have about 10 minutes left. The last thing I was going to do, going back to the handout. So we've done images now. I want to leave a little bit of time for this exporting feature, but I wanted to mention the use of graphic objects on your graph. So if I'm here and I want to basically point out that bananas are really the best thing that we are doing, we have sold 300 pies this month, I might want to draw some attention to this particular data point. So under the Insert tab is a list of shapes. I'm going to be very lighthearted and I'm just going to do a call out. And what the call out lets me do is just write a message. Okay. Arrows are really good. So I could do an arrow here under shapes. It's my arrows for pineapple. And then, you have a lot of options for how to draw attention to things. So I might want to add a little note here. And then you might, you have to use these sparingly, but good use of just a little bit of text art and these types of call outs make it easy for people to understand what you are trying to say about the items that are in your graph. So again, what I did in terms of the tools I'm using I'm using the Insert Shapes option, which is under Insert and Shapes. And you have lots of different types of shapes that you can use to point out different aspects of your graphs. Yep, actually, Deb, that's a good point. The notes look amateurish. There are ways to make the notes not look amateurish, and that's where a little bit of time with your drawing tools can really pay off. If you click under Drawing Tools, when I click on a note, up here are a set of options for changing the way in which your notes look. You have actually quite a lot of control, both good and bad, in how your words are going to look, how your text is going to look, and you can play with them to achieve different visuals. So for the demo, I'm just quickly putting things together. The infographics guide actually has nice examples. Let me pull that up real quickly. You can see, for example, here, ways to kind of, this is an example of a banner as opposed to a call out. And this kind of a banner setup, actually it does it, looks quite professional. It's basically a little line with a flag on it. So lots of different ways to add some notes to your graphs to make it a little bit easier for people to see what you're trying to convey. Okay, so going back to my handout for today, the last thing I'm going to do, and then I'll take questions, is exporting from Excel. So something I do very often is I put my graphs on their own separate sheets. This makes it easier for me later when I need to export them into PowerPoint or Word because they're all a consistent size. So I select my graph and I right-click and I move the graph and I put it on its own sheet, and this is going to be my pies. I'm going to do the same for the first graph we made with the grades. Right-click, move chart, and then make it its own sheet. The advantage of having a separate sheet for each graph is that it makes everything consistent in terms of the sizing of it. And when I'm ready to put this graph into a Word document, I can just right-click and copy this. And then if I open up Word, I want to show you the different options you have in Microsoft Word. So here I am in a blank document in Microsoft Word. I usually, I could just paste, in which case it'll bring the chart in, but it'll connect the chart back to the Excel workbook, which is not always the best option. So often I don't do this. Instead, I go to Paste Special, and I bring the picture in as a picture JPEG or a GIF. And the advantage of doing things this way is I can really lock down the way this is going to look. So there are no changes possible. It's no longer linked to my spreadsheet. I can resize it the way I like. I can also put it inside a Word table so that I can put some words next to it in terms of the wrapping, and I can set it up as a document in a way that works the way I need it to. And the same types of options are available to you in PowerPoint. One nice option in PowerPoint is I can make this graph an animated graph so that the dots, the points of data will come in one by one as I click on them. And that can be very powerful if I'm giving a story about how my grading changed every quarter. I could bring my first quarter, click, bring in my second quarter, and so forth. So I could introduce the data step by step in my presentation. So when I'm exporting from Excel out, there are ways to easily export for Word, PowerPoint, and PDF. And getting your charts set up in a standard size with a standard font and standard line thickness and things like that in Excel will make it a lot nicer for you later when you need to bring it into a different program in order to take the next step with your graph. Okay, so Christiane asked, how did I change it to a JPEG? Let me do that very quickly. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do a different graph this time. I'm going to go to my pies. I'm going to right-click and copy this graph. And then in Word, I'm going to, instead of hitting the Paste button, I'm going to click under the Paste button to Paste Special. And then I have the option of a GIF, a PNG, or a JPEG. I don't find much difference across them. I'm going to choose the JPEG. And there's my very, very large graph. And then I can resize it so that I can put two of them on a page. Okay. If I wanted to do exact sizing, I can actually right-click on this and format it and make it exactly the size I need in the text box. One of these options will let you size the box exactly the right size. Okay. I'm going to stop there with new information. I'm going to ask you if you have any questions for me. And also I'm going to be sending you an email so that you can give me some feedback for this online workshop. This is a new item we are trying here at the Weigel Information Commons, and we would very much appreciate hearing what you liked or did not like about it and any suggestions you have for future workshops. So any last questions? Great. Just please let me know if there's anything else I can answer. We have just a few minutes left before we wind up, and I look forward to meeting you in future workshops. Oh, good. I'm glad that everybody found this to be helpful. Okay, just let us know any questions or suggestions you have. And if there's particular examples that you need help with, you can always send us an email. I'll put our email address in the chat box. This is our general email address where we can also schedule appointments as you need. The quarters to the x-axis and the names to the sides. Sure, let me pull that up, Karubo. If I go back to grades, gradebook, if I was going to graph this, I'm going to click and select, insert, column. There's my graph. If I want to change this, I can click on it, and under design is select data, and here's switching row and column, and that should switch the quarters to the x-axis. And then when I'm ready to put names on the side, I can click on the axis, and then under design, under layout is the axis title, and I want to add a title for the vertical axis. And it's going to be grade. Okay, so hopefully that gave you the two items that were not working earlier. Wonderful, great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Please have a wonderful rest of the day, and let us know how we can help. You know how to contact us.